And so I wanted to maybe double click a little bit on victim mindset, and maybe you can expand a little bit on what are some of the cornerstones, let's say, like clinical signs and symptoms that, for the listener, they might be able to self-reflect and say, oh yeah, I can see myself in that. And I'll also just say before you answer,
Yes.
I think that there's always going to be some sort of vacillate, like we all exist on a continuum. It's not like you're a victim mindset or you're a victor mindset. It's not one or the other. I think there's a lot of shades of gray. So I think that maybe as you're explaining some of the qualities and characteristics of a victim mindset, just understanding that we may be more or less those things, and those things are also subject to shift as well.
Absolutely. I make that very clear in the book that these are, best think of this as a mindset, a dynamic mindset. You can change it throughout the course of your day. You can catch yourself having a victim mindset, waiting in line at Starbucks and like, oh, that woman's taking so long, to order
Why
that coffee.
me?
Yeah. It can happen at any time. So it's best to think of this as a mindset. And you're absolutely right. We ebb and flow. And I think it's a lot harder for people with these self-help books, you very rarely see what I'm saying, which is, take responsibility for your own narcissism. But the kind of books that become bestsellers are the ones it's all the ex-boyfriend's fault.
Right.
It's all, like you're badass, everyone else are haters. Those are the books that tend to sell well. And the people who get on all the talk circuits, they say that kind of stuff. But I have some real talk in this book. I'll read some of these things. These are some of and I think that if we're all being honest with each other, we can fall prey to these things I'm about to read at various parts in our lives. You tend to blame your problems on external circumstances, whether it's that life dealt you a bad hand or that a person or even an entire group of people have it in for you and are holding you back. You attribute all or most negative outcomes or challenges in your life to your past or, quote, that one thing that happened to you. So you keep ruminating and you keep getting into patterns. And instead of saying, okay, I have these patterns and these patterns need to change, you say, okay, I have these patterns and it's all because of the way my mom treated me when I was 3. And you just stop there. Like that's the extent of your healing and growth is like you're stuck at age 3 forever. You're often distrustful of people and wonder what people want from you if they give you something positive. There's a certain cynicism there. You rarely give people the benefit of the doubt if they seem mean to you. So you take things personally. You take everything personally. You take neutrality personally. So you're a victim of everything. So in your head. So like if you go on one date and the person is just like not incredibly enthusiastic about you, that actually means they hate you. And you're a victim of this person as opposed to like, oh, well, this happens. This is called dating. Like not everyone's going to like you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you believe you don't need to take responsibility for your actions. So what you'll see is a lot of people with a victim mindset, they will blame their bad behavior on others always. So they'll be maybe very hostile and aggressive. And when they're called out on that behavior, it's never their fault. So these are just some examples.
So there's a really great parable in the book where I forget her name, but she was like Aunt Ada or something, and she's like, something scary was in the shed.
There's something scary in the tool shed. Yeah, she
Yeah,
would never leave her house because of that.
Never left the house, never left her room, made everybody sort of like people would bring the food up to her and she would eat her, sort of had all these rules and regulations around this one defining moment in her life where she went into the tool shed, she saw something scary, and then that was sort of it was like arrested development. She just stayed there and never really moved past it, as you're saying. And there's something that you talked about that I was reflecting on personally, which was people who, to contrast the victim mindset that you were just describing, there's also, I believe you call it the empowered mindset or the empowerment mindset, where people will ask not why questions, like why me? Why does this always happen? But what questions? So I thought maybe we could stay there for a moment and like just kind of paint the picture, the difference between those two mindsets and how we can ask different questions to sort of shift us from one to the other.
Yeah, Tasha Yerk, I want to give a big shout out to her and her research. She distinguishes between what and why questions. You can ask yourself, why, God? why is this way? And keep ruminating about that. But that's not as productive as, trying to figure out like what practical things can you do? What questions keep us open-minded and they keep us curious? What am I feeling right now? What is this really? What can I do right now in this moment, given that this thing has happened, to move forward, but, what would make me feel better? What would make me feel better, Scott? What do I need to do right now? But unfortunately, we can get stuck in the why questions, which are not as helpful and productive.
Yeah. And they're easier questions, truthfully. It's like, it's easier to stay there. It's easier to, I think that the brain generally, and certainly you can comment on this yourself, but it's easier to find the things that we don't like. It's easier to complain about the things that are bothering us in some capacity rather than to figure out what the solution is to them. So this is why you have people who love to complain on social media, but they don't ever often offer any solutions to the problem. It's just like, can you believe that X, Y, or Z is happening? This war is happening. This person said this, whatever. And then there's no real solutions that are offered. And I'll say maybe selfishly or a little bit proudly, one of the things that we do at Team Dr. Stephanie, if you will, or Hello
Yes,
Betty.
I'm on team. I'm on your team.
Yeah, I love what we do every week is that at the end of the week, we celebrate as a team what I call our glows. So gratitude, learns, opportunities, and wins, because it's actually very easy to figure out okay, so I'm unhappy with this, I'm unhappy with that. But if you're unhappy, where's the learning opportunity, right? If you didn't win, what did you learn? And then how can we also stay in gratitude, which is, in my very humble opinion, you know this more than I would, and with more depth, of course, is that it's much easier to find all the things that are going wrong. It almost is you have to unlearn that. And gratitude is almost like an exercise. Like it's a mental exercise to get you there. Would you agree with that, first of all? Is that something that you agree with?
Well, absolutely. And that's why I think of gratefulness. I use the phrase gratefulness rather than gratitude, because gratitude's kind of like a feeling, a momentary feeling. Gratefulness is an orientation toward life. And
That's
you
great.
can go every day with this orientation, regardless of what's happening. You don't just have to wait for the good things to happen in your life for you to have a feeling of gratitude. You can be grateful for a real challenge you're going through, and as a way of learning from it and a way of growing from it. Christy Nelson is one of my favorite writers, and she wrote this book called Wake Up Grateful. And she argues that's where big shout out to her. I like giving people shout outs when I can. And big shout out to her because she was at stage 4 cancer. And she writes in her book beautifully about how, even when she's laying there in the hospital bed and she doesn't know how much longer she has to live, she was grateful for every moment that she still had. She was grateful for the doctors, the nurses, and how they cared for her, their kindness with her. She was so grateful for them. It really locked her into that gratefulness. So, it's much better to have gratefulness as an orientation than to just hope, throughout the course of our day we'll have something that'll give us a feeling of gratitude.